Welcome to The Shadow Side with Safriana, the podcast where we illuminate what others too often keep hidden in the dark. I'm your host, Safriana Luna, and I believe that true growth and healing happen when we're brave enough to explore the shadows. As you listen, may you find greater understanding and awareness around your personal stories and collective trends. Take care of yourself, and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Shadow Side with Safriana. I am Safriana Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide, and I am so delighted for my first guest segment of this new program to have Karen Foote, a wonderful friend that I have met along my travels who shares many important resonances, we'll say, and I'm sure we're going to get into that today. So, Karen, if you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Karen Foote. I'm primarily a massage therapist. That was my start, but I'm a spiritual intuitive healer. I own a business in northern New Jersey where I work one-on-one with clients. I also host moon circles and teach classes, etc. All of the smorgasbord of the spiritual healing journey that people are on, I'm happy to support. So.
I love that. The spiritual smorgasbord. I'm sure going to get into some of that today too. And we share so much in common with how we both do moon ceremony and have the spiritual and intuitive component, but you're more of a body worker in trade, whereas I've been more of the mind worker in trade. So it's a fun little overlap. And just in case you don't know me, like I said, I'm Safriana Luna. I am a licensed trauma therapist turned transformational mentor. And like Karen, I love the moon. I just love everything spiritual development and like getting curious about new ways of thinking or being or techniques. So we chose the topic today to leap off with of the spiritual awakening. And I would love to hear your own story a little bit, Karen, if you're willing to share some of it and bounce here. Like, many of us think that spiritual awakening is going to be this like warm and fuzzy coming into self, and then everything is just peaceful and at ease and like we've ascended, and that's not really how it is. So I'm so curious about your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a religious home, so I always had a belief in the afterlife, in more, in spirit, that foundation was in there. And I had an interest in those things, like from the time I was like, I don't even know, like 14, definitely 16 was a pivotal time. But I was always reading ghost books and astrology books, and I was interested in mediumship and things like that. But I didn't think that I'd be the one doing that stuff. And then I had the spiritual calling, really, honestly. It was the end of 2008. And I just felt like I needed to be a spiritual intuitive healer. Like I heard that title and I was like, that's it. And I'm like, how does one go about that? And I had met somebody in a course, a craniosacral course, because after massage therapy school, I learned craniosacral. And in that class, I met my future teacher, but she didn't bubble up to be my teacher for 5 years. And then, so at the end of 2008, I had this calling, and then she offered a class on theta healing, which really catapulted me very far, very fast. And it was amazing and beautiful and gorgeous and just wonderful. And I came home and told my husband, and he was just like, not interested. So that's the ugly part of my spiritual journey, you could say, because he dug harder into his atheistic and skeptic stance of his worldview. So that's where they talk about the spiritual journey being messy or the awakening being messy. I can't say it was messy because it was awesome and amazing, but it was messy for my marriage. So yeah, that's my quick summary of that. But I just had all these miraculous, amazing, like eye-opening experiences, and I just wanted to have joyful sharing with him, and I got the opposite. So
yeah,
pretty tragic.
That is.
But I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I wasn't looking to run away. But if we were dating, I would have.
Yeah. Are you still together?
Yeah, we are. We're very happily married. We just celebrated 22 years of marriage a couple of days ago, but we've evolved together through it, and we've had our ups and downs in those first couple of years, but we've learned to just work it out. And he's softened in his position a bit, but he's not fully on board, but it doesn't matter as much. Like I cleaned up my own stuff where I needed him to be that for me.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I know that's probably vulnerable to look back on. And we often have this idea that in relationships we need to be like 100% matched on like everything of value, and that's not actually quite true. It's more the supportiveness of one another. So I imagine that initial thanks was like a big moment.
It was
And
the first time I ever yelled, I want to get a divorce. It was like, I was like, well, how am I supposed to stay married to you? Like, oh, but yeah.
yeah, so what I'm curious in that, like what was it that you worked on in yourself that allowed you to disconnect and be like, we can be a unit that is together and we're parenting together and we're in this relationship, but we're able to have our autonomy and our separate beliefs. Like what shifted for you?
Probably took about 10 years. So definitely the first 5 were not easy. But my sister early on in the response to that explosive reaction that I was even unfamiliar with who I became in my response to him, said, this is just something you can't talk about with him. And I was like, what do you mean? It's not something I can talk about with him. He's my husband. But she's like, just like mom and dad couldn't talk about politics, whenever they did, there was a slamming door and my mom freaking out and crying, my dad was like staunch conservative Republican and my mom wasn't. So that was a problem in their marriage. But it was my sister's advice and it was so hard. So what I did was I worked on myself. I would always get sessions with my teachers and different people, but the community was my saving grace. So I went out of my way to find community because I wasn't going to get it at home. So yeah, I don't know. There's so many layers to the things I worked on, but the bottom line was I believe that me and him picked each other in this life because we've had many lifetimes before. So that's what kind of kept me sane through it out. I'm like, he has no idea how strong I am. He has no idea what it takes. But yeah, it was hard. It was very hard. But yeah, just peeling it back and not need. And he even said, why do you need me to tell you that I believe in you? You have your parents, you have your sister, you have your friends. I'm like, because you're my husband. So it was terrible. It was terrible for a couple of years, but only when we visited it. We just chose to put blinders on and like had to function and focus on all our strengths. And I remember watching Barack Obama and Michelle Obama in some interview. Oh no, it wasn't them. It was George Bush, I think, and his wife. But it was like presidential, and they talked about how to focus on their strengths. That's how they got through their hard times. And I do think Michelle Obama and Barack shared some wisdom too. So it's like between hearing other people like going through these struggles and who have strong marriages, but don't see eye to eye, like it just gave you like faith that you can get through this.
Yeah, there are some things that may be deal breakers for people, but it's clear that it wasn't a deal breaker as long as you knew you could anchor into yourself and still have support. Because it's interesting that this is coming up as a topic. I'm literally currently working on a dating course with 2 other like therapists and like relationship coaches. And we're talking about all of these things. And some things might be deal breakers for us, but sometimes we put too much weight into a romantic relationship where this is my be all end all. Like I have to have their approval or their support. And no, we don't always need that if we have that community support. And that's something my dear friend Red Moon Eagle and I talk about the wheel a lot. So the wheel being the 4 elements, and you've got earth, air, fire, water. You've got the body, you've got the emotions, you've got the spirit, you've got the mind. But the circle that's literally on the outside of the wheel holding all of that is the community. So the individual can only function and spin for so much without that support of that outside community. And we don't always get that. Ideally, we don't just get it from our partner, right? We get it from a rich variety of people. So I'm glad that you found that. And yeah, like to me, I don't know that I could have done what your parents did with the politics, because that to me is a very different conversation. But spirituality, like I'm much more flexible on, because we do perceive different types of information. Like I know that to be true. Some of us have all of these clairs, right? We can pick up on subtle information, and some of us don't really have clairs, but we all have an empathy or energy sensitivity in some capacity. But what we do with that and whether we use it here on Earth or elsewhere is a very different story. It sounds like your husband's just more like down to earth and grounded here.
My last name is Foote because of him.
That
the irony. But I remember my mom being like, he's good for you. He keeps you grounded. I'm like, I don't need to be that grounded. I was like mad about it. And we went to see a therapist at one point for just a brief period when things got he did enough that I was like, okay, I guess I should call time out on myself here. And she said, people have broken up over much less. You guys are in a good spot. The fact that you're here and that you care enough to work on and communicate was good. Yeah, it's a lot though. It was a lot. But we've come to a point where we understand the world differently, but the core truths are the same. We are stardust. We know that. And we're amazed by astrological or more astronomy, not astrology, whatever. It's just interesting to have some common ground in the end. Because at one point he said to me, you believe in more, but all I believe is what we have right now. So it's that much more important to be with you and to be together. And I'm like, oh, that actually changed something for me when he said that, because he's kind of like, you believe that we'll catch up again in the next life, but I don't know that we can. I don't know that we will. So let's just live this life to the fullest. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Red and I recently did a talk. We teach on something called vibrational frequency, which is like how much energy you receive here in this life.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but wonder just on this description, if she uses colors to describe it, even though it has nothing to do with colors. I wonder if he's a red or an orange, because reds are here to be in the earth and to experience the life and to not really look up there for more, but to live this life. And they teach us how to be here. And for me, I'm the exact opposite of that, because I'm up here floating all the time. And I would love to have some people to hold me back down and remind me to live and enjoy what's here. It sounds like it's been a special way for you to come back to the lived experience, as well as hold this multidimensional reality.
Yeah, he gets glimpses of it. He knows. I know he knows it, but yeah, he won't say it out loud.
So I'm curious. It's really funny. It sounds like it was the same year, 2008. It was actually 2007 for me when I got my first tarot deck. And that was the beginning for me. I woke up one day, I heard like a download or spirit tell me I was a druid. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I literally went to the bookstore to see if they had any books. And I came home with a fairy tarot deck. And that was the begining for me. Came home with a fairy tarot deck and Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, which is like the gateway drug for every intuitive healer I know.
For sure.
And I just started to get curious what was going on, but I didn't really unfold into it more until years later. My first marriage, my husband was actually very on board. He also liked druidry, and we literally joined a coven together. It was an eclectic, non-denominational coven, and we did ceremony. And then we split, and I came into a new relationship where it was with somebody who wanted to use spirituality to control. And that was where the awakening really happened, because then it was, is this right for me? I started having to discern more, and it wasn't right for me on that path, but it took me a long time to step out of that. But that, I think, was the awakening part. It was when it got really uncomfortable, it got messy, because it wasn't really that messy in my first little spiritual community. It was just like, yay, I'm learning. I'm a kid going to school. I have all these mentors. They're teaching me ritual. Yay. I've got my cute little tarot deck. And then it was like the shadow work really started. You're looking at other spiritual beings, and are they really spiritual, or are they bypassing?
Yeah, man.
I'm curious what your stance on bypassing and just what you witness people do with that is.
I don't know that I can speak a lot on that, but I just know it brings up 2020 to me, and like all of the toxicity that kind of surfaced then. But like, it always boils down to, what does feel right? Does it feel right? Is it inflicting fear or like doubt or insecurity, like the person who's speaking that? And then if it does, then that's your signal to be like, maybe not this person. Yeah. So I didn't really put too much. I got very confused at the beginning of 2020, because there's people that I really liked, and then they were turning around and saying shit that just did not resonate. And I was like, which way is up? What's going on? So it was bizarro. And I would check in with a few other people to see, is this resonate with you? Okay, no, I'm not following that girl anymore. Like, I was like embarrassed that I was recommending different people to my community. But the spiritual bypassing, I don't know that I can speak well on that as a thing, but just I don't know, it was just a bunch of mayhem and confusion with the different non-truths that people were spouting, that I felt was like crazy.
Yeah. And it's spiritual bypassing is something I do talk quite a bit about because I'm very like, we need to stop doing it.
Just like the toxic positivity, like all of that. Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
all the same. It's
Mhm.
this avoidance of the shadow.
Right.
Hence, this segment is literally called The Shadow Side because I think we need to talk about that more. And I remember when I first started talking about the shadow more, it's probably been about 3 years that I've really been like zooming in on focusing on that.
Mhm.
And people were like, maybe you need to come up with a new term because the term shadow is already so twisted and everybody thinks it's just bad. And I'm like, no, we need to correct that. We need to correct the notion that avoiding discomfort, avoiding pain, avoiding facing an uncomfortable truth, that doesn't get us anywhere. It
Mhm.
really doesn't. It keeps us actually stuck in that experience. And I see so much in the healing world that is that spiritual bypassing, that toxic positivity of just stay high vibe and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
It's not how it
You
works.
got to hang out in the muck and feel the feelings. And it seems to people who are more proactive will dig up this stuff earlier in life, but if you don't deal with that shit, it's going to be coming back when you're in your 50s. I see it all the time. People who haven't dealt with their shadow work, their history, their past. So
Yeah.
it needs to be addressed and brought to the light in order for you to learn from it and for it to be transmuted.
Yeah. I likewise, I've as a trauma therapist, almost my entire caseload when I was working in an agency was women in their late 50s to early 70s who were
Wow.
finally coming to terms with childhood abuse that they'd experienced
Mm-hmm.
and it was like they were finally seeing themselves like excavating these layers of that muck that they thought they were avoiding but they're really just buried under, and it was
Mm-hmm.
really heartbreaking to me, and it caused me to want to work on my stuff even more
Mm-hmm.
proactively
Mm-hmm.
because it's not as scary as we think it's going to be once we actually get into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you hadn't sat with that discomfort, it sounds like you would be on a very different life path.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I
you would
remember
not.
saying to my friend, because shadow work was becoming like almost like it was popping up everywhere, it seemed at some point. And I said to her, I don't know, do I even have any shadows? What have I not dealt with? And whatever. She's like, Karen, your marriage, like, you were dealing with it. And I was like, oh, okay. It's because I'm like, I don't have any like, when I met my husband, he actually said, what's your trauma? What's your story? What's your stuff? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's, did someone molest you? Your uncle molest you when you were little or this or that? And I'm like, no. Like I really was in a very like little bubble, unlike a majority of the world. I had to dig and be like, what are my triggers? What are my triggers? What am I like? I don't have, I'm the baby of the family. So I had a lot of older siblings teasing me or watching things that were inappropriate at younger ages and stuff like that, just because of the age range I was in. But I was like, I was really trying to pull things back. But then meanwhile, I was stepping over the fact that my mother got sick with an autoimmune disease when I was 24. And that was a huge trauma, but I just lived with it because but that's adulthood. So I didn't even address that or even consider that as like trauma until only recently. And I'm 46.
Mhm.
So I didn't have sexual trauma. I was not a part of the Me Too movement. Like I didn't have that. I felt confused when I was trying to peel back shadows because I was like, I don't know if I have any, but of course I do. I just don't have like trauma, like big trauma with a capital T. Besides my
Capital
mom and
T
my
trauma.
husband.
Yeah, and I'm glad you spoke to this too, because yes, I am definitely Me Too movement, like survivor of all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's way more common than it should
It
be by
is.
a
It's so
long
common.
shot. It's ridiculous, and I'm glad you don't have that shared experience. But you speak to something so important in that we all have a trauma of some
Mm-hmm.
kind. Like we literally can't grow up on this planet and not have some form of suffering we've experienced, harm that's been done, medical stuff, accidents, medical stuff for you with your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to so many people that think that they are without traumas because there's almost misinformation at this point about what trauma really means.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do think in terms of what I would call the big T trauma. And we think that that's the only kind of trauma that exists. But
Right.
micro stuff layers on, and incidents like that we're just told to keep going, right? Like just power through, you've got
Mm-hmm.
this. And it was what you just shared about your mom makes me think of my relationship with my dad. we were estranged, but when he got sick right before he passed, he came back in and I was like trying to help him in all of these ways. I didn't process any of what that brought up for me, except for in a handful of poems that I was writing at the time. I released the poetry book about this, but I didn't process it until I like really came back to the book 3 years later and was like, oh, you were really hurt. Oh, I don't remember writing that. That was how big it
Yeah.
was in the moment. But I was just like, we've got to put the responsibility hat on and keep moving forward. Yeah.
When my mom was dying, like in her final like 3 months or whatever, there was was driving around with a seltzer can, a full seltzer in a can that I never opened, and it rolled around in the car the whole summer, and one day it just burst, and I was like, this is symbolic, like of what I'm dealing with. So like I was dealing with the situation as best as I could, going back and forth to the rehab center and to the hospital and to the whatever. And then it wasn't until I think May or like maybe April of this year, I was getting PT for my arm, and she was doing dry needling and was doing breath work with it. And the breath work, we just focused on this one needle in my arm, in my hand. And she said, what's coming to mind? She could tell because of how my breathing changed, whatever. I was like, I'm just seeing the port in my mom's wrist, like in her arm when she was like in those final weeks. And then it was like, blue. It was all of the emotions. And I was like, oh shit, like I've intellectually processed it, but I never let the emotions out. And that was like almost 6 years later before those emotions came out to be processed and to like really feel those feels, even though I always thought I dealt with her. It's like grief is weird. So it was interesting to witness it on myself as it was happening. Oh my gosh, I guess I didn't cry that hard about that. I was so happy that she passed because she was done being miserable in her body. So I celebrated for her.
Yeah.
It was
I resonate with that very much.
Yeah.
And that intellectual piece, going back to this wheel, we can process 1/4 of it in our mind, but then there's that somatic felt sense of what it was like. Like when I was really diving back into everything with my dad, the level of stomach cramps and fatigue and just like physical heaviness, I'm like, oh, now I see that. And I didn't see it back then because I was powering through. I had the intellectual, we've got to get this done. We've got to get through it. But then there is that emotional component. There is the spiritual component and that physical somatic component. And a lot of us just focus on either one half or 1/4. And so the layering in, sometimes it does take years to come back to another layer of it. But being open to that, like if we can be open to that, we're going to get there a lot sooner than if we're in that bypassy. No, we just don't look. And I have been there. I have so been in that bypassy. I just won't look at it.
Yeah.
And it did not serve at all.
No, I guess it's like a short-term gain to not deal, but
yeah, I'm going to be comfortable right now as much as I can be comfortable. Right now. Yeah. I want to kind of like tie these two topics together, but I want to change the topic a little bit because in our personal conversations, you've shared some about your journey with your child and the Board of Education. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to go there at all.
Oh my gosh, it's so crazy. So yeah, Grace figured out that she was Grace when she was just about to turn 15, and she'll be 20 in November. So this is like almost 5 years ago. And whatever, it was hard for us as a family. It wasn't something that we knew how to deal with or expected to be or whatever, but whatever. So we got through all that and everything was fine, supporting her happily in her transition. But then like the end of 2022, I heard rumors of our Board of Ed being taken over by a Moms for Liberty, like extremist majority. So I had to quickly educate myself on all those things because I really was out of the loop. I was paying attention to a lot to the election and things like in 2020, but once everything was cool, like I dropped away from caring and paying attention as much. So I had to get up to speed on what the stupid Moms for Liberty. And I imagine people who are following you are on board.
If they're disagreeing with you, you're in the wrong place, my friend.
So yeah, so then I was like, oh, I should speak. And so I went up there and spoke in like March and whatever. I spoke about my family. I just became an advocate. I had this fire in me and it was really crazy. I remember my one friend, my intuitive friend, she said, Joan of Arc is with you. And then it became Joan of Arc. If you look into Joan of Arc, part of why she was burned is because she was wearing men's clothing. So it was pretty cool to have an aligned, like I really did feel her presence and her fire. And my friend's like, you have righteous anger or righteous rage or whatever. I coordinated a bunch. I used all my business skills, and with me and a whole group of other concerned parents, we put together a huge action of getting the community involved, and we succeeded, and we ended up having the board flipped in November, but it really was a part-time job. So I don't know what aspect you want to ask me about, but that was like the quick summary. Like I just put all my Canvas skills, made pretty slides, so it was digestible information for the public to consume. And then somebody who was going to be eventually running posted it, because she's like, she was ready vocal. She's like, people ready don't like me, I don't care. So I didn't have to have my name on it. But eventually I got more and more public about it. And I like helped design their cards. I canvassed. It was crazy. It was so crazy. What a year. But now there's other towns that have takeovers around here. So the work isn't done yet, but at least our community has been flipped to a better, healthier, non-dysfunctional board.
Yeah. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about. And I'm curious because, again, you shared, I had no idea that we were going to have this come up as a family. For me, I have lived and breathed queer culture pretty much my whole life. I didn't have names for it, but like all of my friends, we were different when we were like 11. We knew it. So I've always been immersed in it. And I'm curious, just even tying this back into awakening. What was that? What did that bring up in you? Because you went the side of this is my child, and like I'm defending my child, and these other really misaligned, unhealthy, toxic people are coming in and spreading a false narrative is what they're doing. And so 100%. You chose to stand up. What was that like in you as you came to confront this thing that you never knew you'd confront?
I don't know. I think in the beginning when she came out, I was kind of like, oh no, now we have to tell people. I was just like, I didn't want attention for it and whatever. And I knew I would probably become like an advocate in some way, but it wasn't until I was met with hearing the board say the things that they were saying and the way they were acting. And I guess when I went to speak up the first time, I don't know, then I became like a regular. Like I was like speaking every month for a few months in a row. But I remember looking at the board president and thinking, he burned me in another lifetime. F him. Like I felt like we had a revisit. Like we circled back to each other, and I was kind of like, F you, this time you're not burning me down. Yeah, it was like a big adrenaline rushes and like kind of craziness. I think I had a burnout like happen in June. I think it was just probably a catch up from all of last year, because I was so involved, and it was so much adrenaline and so much, just like that high blood pressure. I went to a meeting for the first time since the new people were like sworn in, or maybe the second time, I don't know, but they were trying to run the clock because they invited the jerks invited Moms for Liberty people back for this meeting because we were having a new superintendent. So I guess that they were trying to like stake their, I don't know what, but they were stupid and very disorganized. So we were running the clock trying to block them from speaking because local people could speak before out of town people could. So I went and but the whole time my blood pressure was up again. So it's just, I haven't missed this feeling of just being in this room. And then someone was like, you're going to speak, right? And I was like, no. And they're like, no, you have to speak because we have to waste time. And I was like, okay. So I spoke about Perks of Being a Wallflower because that's one of those banned books that is ridiculous. If you've never read it, read it. It's such a good book, regardless of the controversy behind it. And the controversy is just because there's a little bit of a scene that was a rape that happened, but that's not the focus of the book at all. So it's just annoying. But I didn't expect to be it. But once I was it, I kind of like loved it. So, but it was not for long term because it would be too much.
That's a lot of nervous system activation. Yeah. And it's thank you for owning that piece of the first initial thing that came up in this was like, oh no. Because that is our reality right now. And I think that a lot of us are afraid to talk about that reality. That how many conservative families are there out there that have had a queer person in the family come out that has internally made them question their beliefs, but then externally they've been like, but if I choose to side with this, I'm going to lose all of my support from all these other people because I'm in this system that believes this way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh my gosh, what a big thing that so many people are having to confront. And many people would just be like, no. Like, again, that suppression, we're just going to quiet this down.
Mm-hmm.
going to pretend it's not there. We're not going to look, because it is uncomfortable, because there's such stigma and such misinformation and such hatred and us versus them around
I know.
anything having to do with the queer
And then
community.
it seems like from the time she came out in 2019, so it got to be in that cultural, like, common punching bag to be the trans community is now the safe thing to hate. What? So I remember my sister being like, how are you right now? Because there's so much like anti-trans things. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm like, she was going to Rutgers. Like she was in a safe place. Like I was never really worried for her safety, but it's annoying to think that there's people that just decide that they don't like, but whatever. It's not something I can get used to, but I am used to it. It's just whatever. You just live your life. Most people aren't terrible, but I wasn't worried about judgment of other. I was just like, because I knew I would be loud about it because I know my personality. And you're like, oh man, I'm going to talk about this. But I already annoyed people and lost friends during 2020 with my taking a stance on BLM and not liking Trump, that I wasn't really worried about losing anybody. Those that could stick around for that probably be fine. And they were. I get lots of supportive posts from her, and people are always like, how's Grace? So I don't feel any worries in that sense, but it is ridiculous. I don't like the fact that there's a collective punching bag in the trans community. And it's really, really sad. And I just cry about loving her all the time. And she's just like, thank you for loving me so much. I'm like, I just don't understand how some parents don't. That's just mind blowing to me.
It is mind blowing. And it continues to go back to this religious trauma, peace, collective, generational wound of this is the rigid one right way to be. And if you are not this, we're going to cast you out. It's like the ultimate abandonment wound. And it just continues to perpetuate this harm. And yeah, that's why I get loud and vocal about religious trauma and queer issues and all of this, because so many people are silenced, and there needs to be some voices that are speaking. So thank you for all that you have done to speak on behalf of the trans community. And it's not easy.
No. And people are way too interested in my kids' genitals. I just don't understand that.
Oh, I remember I went to grad school to be a therapist. And I remember there were several older people in the program, like older than me, 10, 20 years older than me in the graduate program. And I don't even remember what class it was, but somehow this older gentleman got on the topic of one of his trans friends who is not trans, non-binary. And he literally didn't know if they were assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth. And it drove him bonkers. And he brought it up in class. And I remember being like, do you have strong sexual preferences that you'll only be with one type of genital set? Like, why do you need to know? Are you trying to hook up with them? And he's, no, it just bothers me that I don't know. And I'm like, wow, what does it matter? Literally, what does it matter?
It doesn't. It's crazy. I'm just like, don't worry about that part. What is it of your business?
Yeah, seriously. And to be trans does not require any reconstructive anything.
No. And the surgery could be very painful. So it's just whatever. She found another trans girl who's just like her. They're very happy.
Yeah,
exactly. They'll do whatever they want to do. It's not my business.
But we can support people in making their own autonomous choices about themselves instead of trying to shove them in boxes. And that's what I love about people like you, that we can just let people live unless they are being hate-filled and trying to eliminate, strike fear in, diminish, harm, etc.
Yeah, wrong. Don't make them wrong. Like, they're not wrong.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, if you want to do your conservative thing and you want to live your life the way you want to be my guest. I'm so happy for you to live what's authentic for you. You don't have to put that on me, just like I don't put it on you, right? We don't have to fight. We literally don't have to. It's really a choice at this point.
I like hear Tim Waltz in my head. Mind your own damn business. It's true, because it's
if we could have more of that.
Be a happy almost 20-year-old living life. Like, why should you care? She just wants to live her life and be happy. And if transitioning to being a girl made her happy, what's the issue with that? The school didn't do anything.
Oh my gosh, the rumor of the schools doing surgeries,
Oh my,
and I'm like, what are we doing?
that's
Literally, what are we doing? I was a public school teacher. I know that no school is organized enough to be doing
no.
anything of that nature, especially not in a week.
The talking points for the stupid haters are all about parental rights. And it's, yeah, man, if your kids felt safe with you, you'd be the first to know. And my kid came to me right away and said, this is who I am. And there was like, 3 days later, she said she figured it out 3 days before. But if your kid's not telling you, maybe check your parenting, maybe check yours. So the fact that these parents get all up in arms about it is just a reflection on what shitty parents they must be.
I've had both students and therapy clients. That's the exact story. Like,
yeah,
my parents are sitting around the dinner table watching the news, and every time something queer comes up, they make a remark and they use a slur, and I don't feel safe in my own home. Like, how many times I've heard that story is shocking.
Yeah.
Not okay.
No.
We need more love and acceptance in the world.
100%.
So thank you for all you do for educating and speaking, and also the healing work, and just your transparency in your own journey, and that you've had your own difficulties, and it hasn't been sunshine and roses, and that it's not sunshine and roses for any of us when we're coming into further layers of ourselves and standing up for truth and what's right in the world.
But it can feel like sunshine and rainbows when you're in that high vibe connection space, and that makes it all the more magical when you can access those places.
Exactly. And anybody that tells you it's going to be that 24/7 probably is a cult.
Yeah.
You're probably going to quickly determine that that's not the case.
Exactly.
And that's exactly it. One of my core teachings is how much shadow you allow yourself to access is also how much light you allow yourself to access. And if we don't let ourselves feel our low, will we let ourselves feel our high? And the answer is usually no.
Yeah. If you dead in the one, you're dead in the other. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story today. And again, if you have enjoyed Karen's perspectives and want to reach out to her in New Jersey, rebalancewithreiki.com, and you can look her up.
And I'm on Instagram. Moon Magic Wellness is my storefront name. And so, yeah, they're both around. If you, there's not that many Karen Footes in the Reiki world. You'll find me quick enough if you Google it.
Well, thank you. I love your energy. I love what you do in the world. That brings us to the end of this conversation today. Thanks for being brave enough to walk in the shadows with me. If you found value in this episode, please consider subscribing to Shadowside with Safriana wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave a review to help others find this space of transparency and expansion. You can also connect with me at safriana.com or livinglunas.com for more information. Until next time, know I'm loving you fiercely and cheering you on.